In management matters, the ripple effect of a Secret Service probe. This week, the Inspector General for Homeland Security, John Roth, reopened an investigation. He wants to know more about the efforts to discredit Congressman Jason Chaffetz. It's a complicated case at a sensitive time for the agency. For more, I'm joined by Francis Rose, host of In Depth with Francis Rose, weekday mornings from 8 to 10 on Federal News Radio 1500 AM in Washington, D.C. Francis, why did Roth reopen this probe? What happened?
Well, what happened essentially was the leader of the Secret Service, when he conducted the investigation, initially said, I didn't know anything about what was going on with the leakage of the information about Jason Chaffetz, the chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, until a period of time after it had happened. April 1st of this year was when he claimed he knew about it. Later, he changed his recollection, is the term that the Secret Service used, to say that he had heard rumors about Mr. Chaffetz's job application to the Secret Service in 2003 being leaked to the media on March 25th. And so when the Inspector General, Mr. Roth at DHS, heard about this, he said, I want to know more. I want to open this investigation again, Morris.
You know, this story is like an onion. We can peel back layer after layer. Now, let's start with the House leadership race. Chaffetz is running. How does the investigation affect his chances?
It probably doesn't affect him very much, Morris. It probably makes him a more sympathetic person among the Republican conservatives. Beyond that, it's really hard to see any advantage that he gains or any disadvantage that it causes to be seen as the subject of this leak of the Secret Service.
Now, Senator Tom Cotton wants the Justice Department to open a criminal investigation into the leak.
I'm not going to prejudge the outcome here, but they need to take this with the gravity that it warrants. Armed agents of the executive violated the law to intimidate a congressman from doing his job. If they will do that to the congressman who oversees them with his influence and his megaphone, what might they do to the little guy, the normal American?
He's got a point, Francis. Cotton is holding up nominations in response to this scandal. Tell us more.
Yeah, he has. There are 3 State Department nominations that Senator Cotton's put a hold on until he either gets the Justice Department to take some action, or until somebody convinces him that other action that somebody else is going to take will suffice to get him to remove those holds. A senator can place a hold on any nomination for any reason at any time. Senator Cotton's obviously incensed enough about what's going on. These State Department nominations don't appear to be pertinent to what's going on in the Secret Service, but they happen to be the next nominations in the pipeline. And quite often, senators are able to use holds very effectively to maybe not get the action that they ask for in the beginning, as Senator Cotton has asked for a Justice Department inquiry about the Secret Service efforts, but quite often those holds are used effectively to get some kind of action or some kind of answers in response to a situation like we have with the Secret Service.
Well, I'll tell you what, it gets everybody's attention, doesn't it? All right, the probe does not come at an opportune time for DHS. According to the Federal Employment Viewpoint Survey, DHS was dead last with an employee engagement score of 53%. Furthermore, that score dropped for a 5th straight year. Does Secretary Jay Johnson have a crisis on his hands?
Well, if Secretary Johnson, to be fair, has a crisis on his hands with these Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey numbers, then Secretary Napolitano had a crisis on her hands.
That's true.
And the secretaries before them had crises on their hands because the Department of Homeland Security's never scored well in the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey. There's a school of thought among human resources officials in the government that maybe DHS, because of the nature of the structure of the agency and because of the nature of some of the missions that it conducts, will never have great engagement and morale scores. It's just too big of an organization doing too many disparate missions, and some of them aren't really fun missions. You know, it's hard to get people excited, I imagine, to become screeners at the airport, things like that inside the Transportation Security Administration. Are these good numbers? No, they're terrible numbers. DHS, though, knows they're terrible numbers, and they've done all kinds of things over the years to try to improve those numbers. The most recent one is hiring an official whose entire job is devoted to increasing engagement and leadership at the agencies and DHS says it's not just to get better numbers, it's to get better outcomes for the American people.
On the day that Chaffetz's investigation was reopened, Johnson held a press conference in Washington. Here's an excerpt.
For granted. Over the last 2 weeks, the Secret Service was flawlessly successful in orchestrating one of the largest, if not the largest, domestic security operation in the history of this country.
All right, in that 2-week span, the Secret Service protected Pope Francis in 3 cities and provided security details for 160 world leaders at the United Nations. Quite an undertaking. That said, the timing of this press conference was not ideal. It's a real catch-22 for Jeh Johnson. How can he shore up DHS in the middle of all this controversy?
Well, I'm not sure that the timing was terrible for that news conference. I think it was fair for Secretary Johnson to point out, as he did at this news conference, yeah, we're experiencing some challenges in the Secret Service, but it's not like the entire agency is screwed up and nothing's working right. And I think it was fair for him to point out, here are some accomplishments of the Secret Service in the past couple of weeks. That being said, yes, the Secret Service is in a big situation right now, because you got to remember, it's not just the problems with Jason Chaffetz's job application being leaked. We had the guy who jumped the White House fence. We had the guy who got in the elevator at the hotel that the president was staying at in Atlanta. We had the drone flown over the wall at the White House. All kinds of issues that the Secret Service is up against. So there's no denying there's a crisis at that agency. But when you consider that there are 22 components inside the Homeland Security Department, having this level of problems at one doesn't imply a crisis for the entire organization.
Herding cats, among other things.
Indeed it is.
Francis Rose with Federal News Radio in Washington. Thanks, Francis.
Thank you, Morris.